all this representation. I've known all of y'all for a minute, but I've never seen y'all together.
That's true.
So here we
Go
are. We
for
are
it.
live. I can see us on the screen. Thank you, everyone, for staying with us for this fantastic day of celebration of Black, Indigenous, people of color in games. And thank you, Rob Manuel. We see you, executive producer, and Quiana, and Joe, and Mason, and Bailey, and Eric, and Abby, everybody who's been a part of this today. So we have a fantastic group of leaders of color in gaming all together. And so I'll let you all introduce yourselves in order. We'll begin with Ms. Elaine Gomez.
Hi, everybody. My name is Elaine Gomez. I am one of the co-founders of Latinx in Gaming, and also my day job is I'm a game designer at Elaine Media. So nice to be here with all of you.
Thank you. And then we'll go to Rafi.
Hey everyone, I'm Rafi, co-founder and president of NYC Gamers.
And then JC.
My name is JC. I'm the founder and creator of the Gamer Allied People of Color.
And then Rick.
Hey folks, I'm Rick, he, him, his. I'm one of the co-founders of the San Francisco Gamers, and my day job is I'm a social worker for a queer family organization.
Right on. And last but not least, from Seattle and from Gay Geeks.
Hi, I'm Kent, he, him pronouns, and I'm here as an admin of Seattle Gamers and a founding member of Gay Geeks. I'll be representing on behalf of Alhamdulillah too. Alex Garcia.
Yes. Well, one of the first things you discover, right? All these founders of color. So interesting, right? Such a rich history that even we didn't all know, right? That so many of these organizations were built upon people with unique perspectives and points of view. So first question, I actually want to point to the people from regional groups. New York, San Francisco, Seattle. So, in this past year, we've been told to separate, to keep apart, right? And you built organizations that were around literally bringing people physically together. And so I'm curious if we can just sort of go East Coast to West Coast. How have you navigated these digital times? Like, how have you sort of kept an identity, kept an existence together when people have been pushed apart in so many ways? I'll ask you, Rafi, you're East.
All right. New York City, setting an example. I'm gonna leave it at that. But fun part on my end, I actually was on lockdown. I was at at home quarantine a week before like all of New York City, right? Because of circumstances that happened up here in the Westchester. And this is when we were first getting information uptown about the pandemic and everything, right? So it was like, all right, cool. I'm out of quarantine. It's time for me to go back to work. My day job, I do social work as a advocate for survivors of domestic violence and intimate partner violence in queer communities. I'm thinking, all right, cool. Lockdown. So I had to figure out what does that mean for me to be working virtually, for me to be working from home, where I was also a part-time home attendant for my father. What does it mean for me to be able to have the, you know, um, digital access necessary to be able to keep doing the work. And then on top of that, I have NYC Gamers, and we're on the process of getting our, we're on the path to 501c3 status, right? So we had all of these plans with like Pride events and more PAX conventions. I wanted to go to the West Coast. I was so ready to go to Canada and to like do all these amazing networking things. And it's like, no, y'all have Twitch and Discord, make it work. So, it was a struggle 2020, but I had an extraordinary team and an even more extraordinary community of leaders. Many of you who are a part of this panel today, we were able to really communicate with each other and skill share and figure out what works and what is it that our community is asking for. And out of that came a larger conversation that I hope we talk about more tonight about like access needs and how we're going to take what we learned in 2020 and keep using that moving forward into 2021.
We're going to talk all about it. But next, I want to hear from going east to west. Let me do this right. I want to say San Francisco.
Okay, thanks, Gordon. So it has been pretty hard because in San Francisco, if you're not familiar how we were formed, it was through Reddit. There was a year where a bunch of us on the gamers Reddit said, hey, I bet a bunch of us live near each other. Let's start these groups. And so SF in particular, we were really, really going hard on doing all of these game events at bars and at like different people's houses, all that kind of stuff. And so when this hit, we were really fortunate that we had already started trying to create things like a Discord channel and other ways that people could connect online. But I really have to owe it to our Discord moderator, Derek Wong, who works over at Roblox. He has really taken the reins and has pushed to get people on, move people from our general platform, which is Facebook, to Discord so we can connect more directly with one another, game with one another. We've gotten Fall Guys nights, we've gotten Overwatch nights, a bunch of different games that we've had nights around, but he's really taken the lead on making sure that community is built. On top of that, you know, our California collection is pretty strong. Ray Lanchon over at the QWERTY Gamers down in Southern California is a good friend of mine. And Derek has brought in some of their people who have more like Twitch notoriety or popularity to also come in and game with us. And so it's really pulled in some folks that way.
And then same question to you, Seattle.
Hi, thank you. It's actually, it's honestly, 2020 was a very weird year for all of us as gamer leads, as you know. And, you know, similar to SF Gamers, Seattle Gamers originally started out on Reddit. And that was back in 2015. And we originally started out as a just monthly meetup at a bar. And I joined in 2016, and later we became an LLC in 2017. But one of the big things about Seattle Gamers is that we really created an environment which was all about gathering in person. It's like, yes, we all had our gaming lives, but it really functioned more as a social hub than a gaming event group, which is an important distinction to make. So by the time COVID happened, I mean, we were running 102 events a year. So to go from 102 events in person to nothing was a lot. Also, because we were founded in 2015, 2020 was supposed to be our big year. We had an anniversary plan, a 5-year anniversary. Sorry about my cat. With a 5-year anniversary party planned, I was in a panel at Emerald City Comic Con, you know, right before lockdown happened, and we had our first annual, well, not our first annual, but like our biggest ECCC party actually planned, and obviously none of those things happened. So we did make a bit of a shift to Discord as well, which had already been kind of picking up. But to be perfectly honest, because we had functioned as an in-person social hub, we did, you know, honestly struggle. And I just have to be real about it, because I think that there's this thing that queer gaming leaders are doing where we're all kind of pretending everything is fine. And I think we really have to be honest with ourselves and say, honestly, it has not been fine. And that's okay. Because in acknowledging the ways that it's not, we are going to be much more able, much more equipped to figuring out what to do going forward.
Cool. Now I want to put a question to Elaine and JC. So first, maybe both of you introduce your organizations, because yours are actually around identity, but not geographically placed, but like just around games. So maybe Elaine first. Tell, like, Latinx and gaming can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, right? That's a broad stroke. So maybe sort of paint the picture of like the focus, the goals, the mission of Latinx and games.
So the mission, our mission statement for Latinx and Gaming is to be a community that uplifts and celebrates the Latinx community in games. So that means professionals who are in the industry, as well as students who are trying to get in, or just people who are involved some way in the industry. So content creators, journalists, people in marketing, biz dev, etc. So any field within games, we support, we bring resources, and we build community, and above all, help amplify their voices and their work, so that they can get speaking engagements, they can get funding for the games, whatever it is that they need. That's what we're here for. So it paints like you said, Gordon, a really broad stroke because we are based in the United States. We're all here living in across the West Coast, and then we have one in the East Coast in our leadership team. But our community is also across all of Latin America and the Caribbean. And you have differences in language when, yes, it's Spanish, but everybody has like their own words, their own phrases of how to communicate. Just the word itself, Latinx, has been like a big, a not I wouldn't say a problem, but it's definitely been in uh, a heated trivial word that we decided to use because we are including our non-binary community, we're including our LGBTQ community. So there's a lot of cultural situations when it comes to misogyny and homophobia and all that stuff, and by declaring our 501c3 Latinx, we're already making a stand. So it puts a little bit of a needle in the conversation at large, not in the States but across all of our countries. So it's we're really trying our best to be as proactive and as game changing as possible in our space, because we want that to be the norm. We don't want that to be an American term or something that people don't understand. We want it to be international, and we want our more than anything for our community members to feel seen. That is like the number one thing for us, and that includes what we often say. It is like the 1%, to include them along in this ride that we're all riding on. So that's kind of like what we do and some of the things that we've been battling, because it's definitely not easy when you're people in your own community, like people from your own country, your own people are like, why are you using Latinx? That's such an ugly word. Like, you're butchering the Spanish language. Like, if they don't like it, then they should just like not be identifying as Latinx. It's really, really wild, the types of conversations that have arisen just from the name. And people forget the good that you're doing, the impact that you're having on people's lives, and the things that we are really doing to help and uplift those people that don't have the resources that we are so fortunate to have in the United States. Something as simple as a game dev kit that is not accessible in countries like Uruguay or Paraguay, where we can perhaps make connections with people who have access to that and bring that type of resource to those developers or people that need it. So it's definitely a labor of love.
Mhm.
And it's not just that, but also just us putting our kind of like our foot in those doors that people want to shut down, and putting ourselves in the middle of the bullet storm so that all of our people can walk in through those doors.
Right on. Yeah, Latinx and gaming. I understand. JC, following on that same question.
Our mission statement is to introduce what it is to be a gamer or in the gaming community from a culture's perspective. As general as that sounds, I think there is a lot of conversation about how we exist in other predominantly white spaces when it comes to either gaming or nerd culture, and the conversation as gay or LGBTQ plus individuals contributing to that. And I think it's a lot of, in our group, we call it a little bit of unseasoning. So, we see some comments and some posts and some things, and we're just like, this ain't got what I'm, we're kind of, hi, I love Zelda, please play with me. Okay, we got it. We're having different conversations from where we are. And what Gay Pop wants to do as a whole is bring this conversation to a louder room, where people can hear it, where people can see us, so they don't think that when they talk about what it is to be a nerd, they automatically think those selfies of, hey, can you come play with me with Zelda? When they think of it to be Black, they don't automatically think that all of us are members of the Dragon Ball Z Deacon Board. That they see that when we are Black and gay, or if we are Black and lesbian, or if we are Black and trans, or if we are Black and non-binary, that we exist in a community with a different flavor, a different audience, a different voice, a different, just a different feel of where we come from in the community. What we get in our group is something that you might experience high and by with somebody, but you never see like 2,000 plus people that are able to integrate with one another and then just get down to that, real barbershop, beauty shop conversation that you want to have about being a nerd. And we're actually expanding. We were national. Now I have a chapter that's starting to develop in France. I have a chapter that's starting to develop. I have a chapter that's established in Canada, excuse me. We were starting to do events at first, and then we kind of had to shut down, of course, because of COVID. But because our narrative had already began online in the Facebook group, it wasn't really much of a a difficulty as much as it was anxiety to know who they were next to. So we have a directory past COVID that we're going to kind of roll out, but eventually I'll be marching toward a B Corp. I think that's the decision that I finally made. And then we're hoping that we can reach the, louder platforms and the larger platforms as we continue to grow and we continue to navigate what it is to be us. Because not only are we trying to introduce ourselves to each other, but we're trying to introduce ourselves to everyone else at the same time. And I think a lot of what goes on, I think in gaming as, gay and brown or LGBTQ plus and brown, is that there's a conversation we need to have with each other because we kind of haven't really been around each other in the subsects of the community, more or less around everyone else.
Wow. Oh, so much goodness. Okay, so we're going to slow down for a second. First thing is people need to be able to find you. So all of you who are in the chat, can you put the links to find you in the chat? Because a lot of people are like, there's a New York Gamers, there's a Latinx in gaming. What? There's a Gay Poc, there's a San Francisco. How do I even engage? So I don't even want to wait till like the last minute and be like, okay, how do I find you on Twitter? We'll just start with the beginning with discovery. And the question that I want you to all think about, because you are leaders of color and leaders of diversity, is how did you bring your non-default selves, right, into positions of leadership, right? Like, Elaine, you spoke about, Latinx and having to bring X to the discussion, right? Each of you, because I know you, right, has had to bring yourself, right, into the center, right, into the leadership, and be sure that you are building a place and community where you yourself could feel at home in your uniqueness, right? And I bet there's a lot of people out there who feel unique even inside gaming spaces of your label, right? So maybe you could make it a little more personal and just sort of talk about that a little bit, and I'll bring it back. You know what? Let's bring it back to Kinte. Let's start there.
It's actually just Kins, but that's okay. We'll go. It's okay. People do it all the time.
Okay.
And could I have you rephrase that question again? Just
okay. Here is Kins. Okay, so I don't know your life. Okay.
Okay. Sure.
But I know that you, through your heritage, have a unique perspective coming into the Seattle gaming community. Sure. And that you bring that to the fore, right, as part of who you are, and thus afford a space for all people to bring who they are into Seattle gamers.
Well, I appreciate that and you so much. And thank you for saying that. So I'm Filipino, and I think one of the big things too is that I didn't grow up in this country, and I actually am an immigrant and a small business owner. I'm a self-employed hairstylist, and I'm also a performer. And for those of you who know Philippine culture, it's actually very common for us to be extroverts. We are a very community-focused culture, as a whole. And I think there's something to be said about having, inherently, there is a little bit of a pervasive stereotype around gamers being introverts. And there's a lot of truth to that. I think a lot of people have found a home in gaming. But the thing about it is that you can be introverted and still need community. And the way that introverts and extroverts create space is different. And kind of circling around the idea of Seattle gamers functioning as a social hub, it takes a lot of energy to create those kinds of spaces. And one of the great things we did is create this consistency of expectations. So people can interact with the group, can come in and out as they need to. We'll see people who have maybe come to an event and we won't see them for 11 months. And then all of a sudden they'll come for 7 weeks straight and then disappear again. Because at the end of the day, the more you can create consistent space, the more you can set expectations, the better we can create avenues for people to be able to interact and do that. So basically, TLDR is that I think that Philippine culture is just so focused around community, and being able to bring that aspect into community organizing to serve other needs was just kind of a natural fit.
Awesome. Well, I saw that evoked a reaction from Rick. And so I want to go to that, because I was going to lead you as an educator, but forget that. Rick, I saw some feelings there. Talk about it.
I mean, the feelings come from the fact that I'm Filipino too. I was born here in the United States, first generation, right? My family came over in the 70s, etc. And it's funny when you say that Filipino culture is very extroverted, because I don't know your background, Kins, but my families are from Pangasinan and from Pampanga. And so there's two different, like almost warring kind of personalities there.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
But the way that that has translated into my family is that we're huge introverts. Right. So we fall right into that gamer stereotype. But one of the things that is true is that, there is an overall sense of community and family. And I think that that is true for a lot of immigrant communities, simply because when we get here, the things that we assume can stay the same are shifted, right? And so we look for a lot of different cultural cues that tell us, oh, it's okay to be like this, or it's okay for me to express in this certain way. So it becomes a safe space. In the same way, SF Gamers, it really was a life raft for me, because the way that I experienced the queer community here was one where there was a lot of interest in things that weren't necessarily my cup of tea, right? Like there was a gay volleyball group, and there were like gay like parties. Like I like parties, but like as an introvert, like that's not my main thing, right? I was a nerd who really liked Cloud from Final Fantasy VII, right? Like I geeked out over my Atari 7600, right? Like that ages me a little, but that's true, right? Like those were the things that interested me. And I remember when I was first trying to date, right? And I would talk about my gaming stuff, it was a complete turnoff, right? Like you're a nerd. Like why? That's not sexy. That's not gay, right? There's this weird kind of dichotomy of gaming and nerdiness isn't sexy, which I have problems with because I find nerdiness super sexy. But I wanted to create that community, and so it was really fortunate that I found Reddit and other people who felt the same way and said, there's not anything for me in the queer community that says that I can have these geeky, nerdy interests and still be gay, right? And so we did. We started all those different groups, and culturally, again, that was one that was started by well, by me as a Filipino person, by my co-founder Rashad Sloan, right? Another Black gamer, by my other co-founder Dustin Hart, who is somebody who is who's part of the disability community, right? We found, right, there was this need, that story, that immigrant story, right? We're immigrants within even our own spaces because we're shipped to a social situation where our interests aren't accepted, right? On top of our sexual orientation, on top of our gender expression, on top of all of those other things that make us queer as well, right? So
Rick is smart, people. In case you don't know, we're going to talk about smart things. Reading level going up tonight on Twitch. Let's go. Rafi, you have some intersectionality to you. How do you bring that to the fore?
Sometimes it depends on a Tuesday, as a treat.
Okay.
I love having these conversations, and I appreciate, whenever we get to share these as a community, right? Because gaming was where I found what intersectionally what intersection too much coffee, what intersectionality actually looked like for me, right? Because I was invited to get involved with Gamer X East a couple years back, and I was volunteer coordinator with them. Then I went ahead and did it the next year, and then I was invited to go to PAX East, and I just kept getting more and more involved to go to all of these amazing gaming events, and that's where I met other people that looked like me. And it wasn't the usual look like me or identify the way I do in a monolithic way, which is the way that often I was surrounded by, especially in New York City, where there's this heavy nonprofit culture where your identity is monetized and your identity is a statistic. So when I was feeling Black, I went to hang out with the Black organization, right? And when I was feeling Latinx, I went to the Heights and I went to my Latinx organization. When I was feeling queer, I had to go all the way to Brooklyn because queer didn't hit Midtown until like maybe 3 years ago when it was popping, you know? And yeah, I go to these gaming events and I meet people that are not monolithic in their truth and the way that they express themselves. And I'm like, well, shit, I wish I had that years ago because sometimes I feel like my identity is a fucking DLC, you know? Like, you know, and I kept asking people, I kept asking amazing people in these spaces. I was like, how do I bring that to the Bronx? How do I bring that to New York City? How do I get involved with people who are already doing it in New York City so that I don't have to reinvent any wheels and we keep it moving in a positive direction, and so many beautiful doors opened up for me, and I felt very honored to be a part of those circumstances that led up to NYC Gamers being where we are today and where we're moving forward, right? And I'm so proud of the fact that I had the support that I needed from my community, not just here in New York City, but internationally, right? To be able to bring everything with me, my being Black, my being Boricua, my being from the hood, being a projects baby, being disabled, being neurodivergent. I'm like, the list goes on, y'all. Like, it's real, right? But the fact that I could bring everything that makes up Rappy into this space is a blessing because I don't have to feel like I'm always code switching, and I don't have to feel like I'm constantly taking out one cartridge to put in another, showing my age, cartridge. But I'm gonna leave it at that.
Wait, and for those of you at home, the cartridge was invented by a Black man, Jerry Lawson. It's Black History Month.
Talk about it.
But the question continues, JC. Same question, because I don't know, how did you come to put yourself out there? How do you bring your uniqueness to that?
The way we started, I got blocked from another group. There was a very stiff argument around a certain game that came out a few years ago called Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, and their lack of presence with the X-Men. And I am a proud member of the No X-Men, No Peace movement. So, me and I wanted to play the game, and ended up people getting blocked. And a friend of mine had hit me up, and he was like, "Why don't you make your own group?" And he was like, "You're always trying to dance in these other groups, and why don't you just make your own thing, and then you can kind of just bring your voice forward." And so I did in 2017 in November, and in a month we had 600 people. And I kept seeing people say, "Oh, is this the new group?" And I was just like, okay, there's some history that I'm missing here. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna just roll with it, my people were joining and activity was busting. And then, we had issues coming forward. And the way I brought myself in was kind of as a teacher and a student. And I know this sounds really weird to say, but it's because I came in not with the intuition of wanting to be a leader. It kind of just came that way because everybody had joined my group, and we went from like 600 to 1,500 before the year was up. And then Facebook was messaging me saying, "You're a power admin of the United States. You need to join this group and join that." I was like, what? Like, it just hit me out of nowhere. And I had to learn. And I was like, okay, so I'm in this gaming thing then. What's up? You know what I'm saying? So I already had, a background as a TO in the FGC. I was like, I could do this. And then a lot of conversations that I was not ready for at the time started to come up, like, and it's funny, you guys mentioned earlier how you guys said you bumped into a lot of people who thought nerdiness was not sexy. I have nerds who are ready to take their clothes off as soon as they log into Facebook and click the tab on my group. And then I have a lot of couples in my group who abstain from such behavior. And if their partner would see that stuff on the timeline, they would be ready to fight and the relationship may be over. So that was the very first hurdle I had to jump. And I had to insert myself in the middle. Me at the time, I was getting ready to be engaged. So it was like, all right, well, I understand this, but I also understand single-minded people. How do we ride this wave? Then the next huge argument that came up was the masculine versus the feminine gamer. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, let me go be a student. Let me read, let me step back, let me listen, see what everybody's talking about. Okay, now let me go get on live and let me go snap a rant or whatever I'm gonna do in order to bring some relevance to this. And I gotta say, I don't think I'm done yet. There are still some issues that we haven't mastered. I think as a leader in this community, dealing with so many different personalities and so many different angles of what it is to be Black, what it is to be POC, what it is to be Latinx, what it is to be, whatever nationality that you come from, and then try to coagulate with what it is to be a gamer. I'm still learning as a student and as a teacher. So I think I want to bring that conversation forward, and I want to get on a larger platform to just kind of talk with everybody and not only see what I can teach others based on the experiences that I've had over the last 3 years, but to also see what I can learn from other people as I continue to grow, get larger, and we start to approach our own, end game. And our end game is legislation. We want protections for, Black and brown bodies in the tech development field, and we want to see if we can bring forward some incentives that, we could possibly get from, government to give bigger companies to highlight, spotlight, and employ Black and brown people in those spaces, because we have so many different conferences and we have so many different spaces where we, congregate. And at the end of the day, I'm watching tonight and they're still saying in these companies, there's a lack of diversity. So I'm thinking maybe there's something we can do. And I hope that, my presence can bring that to fruition.
Well, that segue, Elaine. Say right?
Oh my goodness.
Fighting the same fight. The exact same fight.
The exact same fight.
Three-legged race. Three-legged race.
Yeah, it's tough. Like, I resonate with what every single one of you has said, because it's what Rafi said. It's being Latinx is like, we're not monolithic, right? We have Black Latinx, we have Asian Latinx, we have Indigenous Latinx. There's so many people from all different like banners and flags, and we have to build family for all of them. We feel that responsibility to be there for them, regardless of where they're coming from, whether they speak Spanish or Portuguese or an indigenous language or no English at all. We have to be there. And there's so many interesting conversations when it comes to what was said before about being an immigrant, where you have people who have come from their home countries to the United States, or who were born in the United States, or have some type of Latinidad in them, and they battle every single day with identifying, well, if I don't speak Spanish, does that mean that I can say I'm Latinx? If my parents were born and raised here in the United States, I've never tasted food from my country, I have never met my grandparents, or there's really interesting and very tough conversations that happen in our community, where people are trying to validate who they are, and then identity, not just their heritage, but also the way that they carry themselves in the space, right? And being Puerto Rican, like Rafi, having blood that is indigenous and African and Spaniard and white, and wrestling with that trifecta of like, what do I want to celebrate, and what do I want to for my parents to understand, when they weren't taught these things. They didn't think that those things were important, because the generational trauma of trying to suppress a lot of this stuff is rampant in all of our communities, right? And trying to go on our own journeys to discover ourselves, who we are, what our Latinidad means to us, what being Latinx means to me personally, may be different than what it is to Rafi or somebody else in our community. And what we saw, our group was founded by Christina Amaya, and what she saw like 5 years ago was a need where, hey, there's so many groups in the industry, but there's no groups for Latinx folks. Like, what's going on? And in talking with some people, we just found out that there was an IGDA, like special interest group, that just was not active anymore, and therefore nobody was kind of trying to pick up that ball and play the game again. And it takes a lot of sacrifice to say, you know what, I'm going to be the one who's going to step up if nobody else is doing it, so that I can build something and pass on the baton when it's time for me to take a seat. And in that effort is so difficult, because as you all have day jobs and you have your own passions and interests, your relationships, your friendships, add on the responsibility of carrying the weight of an entire community on their shoulders, to make sure that they have the space that they need to feel safe and to feel like they matter. Because that's one of the things that I'm sure everybody here can attest to, is being in games can be really isolating when you are not the typical person who's celebrated in this space. And for example, when it comes to getting awards, from whatever it may be, the game awards or whatever it may be, not seeing people like you in those positions of, or even leadership, director roles in games industries or DNI orgs, right? And it takes a lot to say, you know what? I don't see the awards. I don't see the scholarships. I don't see the incubators. I'm going to start talking to people and make it happen. And that's has been really tough, and it has been a journey, right? Because it doesn't happen overnight. Um, and when it takes 4, 5, 6 years for you to see those seeds that you planted a long time ago through your blood, sweat, and tears, thinking that, you know what, there's only like 10 people coming to our events, there's only not even 100 people enrolling in things, you get super discouraged, because then you start saying to yourself, am I really making a difference here? Like, do I matter in the whole grand scheme of things? And then 5 years down the line, when we see, you know, all those things that we did 5 years ago, and going into the game awards and getting recognized as a global gaming citizen, or being on articles and all these things, it was through sacrifice and those aggravating nights where I cried, Christina has cried, our co-founders have cried, of saying like, really, like, we're doing so much and nobody sees us, nobody sees the effort that we're putting in, nobody sees that we are literally broke and we cannot pay speakers, we cannot do anything because we're literally tied and bound to like our jobs and what's in our pocket and what's in our bank accounts. And to see that grow, and now people recognize like, oh wow, there's a Latinx and gaming community, oh wow, like I really needed this. When you have somebody come and type you a message and says, I always wanted this and I really needed this community, I feel seen, I feel like I matter, and now I feel like I have a familia, like that, just it fills you up with so much joy, because it means that it was nothing, it was not in vain, your effort was not in vain, those tears are not in vain, you trying, the doors that were shut all around when you're trying to get for help, all of that grief is not in vain, because somebody's getting something out of it, and people are getting jobs from our community in games, students are getting mentors, like there's so much that's going on, and we're so glad that we took the bullet, we bit the bullet, right? And we decided to take that sacrifice and do that for our community, and hopefully build leaders in our community so that they can continue this, because this is all grassroots, like none of us get any, we don't get paid for this, all of us do this because we love our people. I wish that I would get paid because I am poor. But the reality is that we do it for the love of others, right? And we humble ourselves so that others can be uplifted and have those opportunities that we wish we had when we first started, when we didn't have a community, we didn't have anybody to look up to. So I am hoping that in the 5 to 10 years from now, we can see so much more growth, and we can see all those changes that we have all longed to see in our spaces and games.
Oh my, there you go. Sorry. And I'm all my feelings, because you know what? I have all of you. I dreamed of you existing, and now look at you on the Twitch. I'm surviving all of this. So I'm gonna ask you a tough question. So, and it's sort of built on what you were talking about. I'm gonna talk about queerness, right? But when I say queerness, all of you have groups where there's queerness of expression, like JC was talking about. People who are, you know, putting themselves out there in all sorts of ways. Queerness of origin, right? Spanish isn't Spanish, right? We also have a queerness of what they're looking for, right? Are they looking for love? Are they looking for money? Or are they looking for games? And even if they're looking for games, there's a queerness across games. Like if I want to play my Pokemon all day, but you want to fight, but you want to Warcraft, right? People can be very queer to each other across the axes of games. My question to all of you as leaders is, how do you keep a compass, right? Because you can't be everything to everybody. You can't have every platform running left, right, and center all the time. You have to make choices, right, about what you put resources to, what people can look to have happen again and again. And so I'm curious, for each of you, how do you sort of anchor your organizations, right, in what is true versus what is just not going to be true for us? And I'll start. Gotta go back. Let's start with Kings. Just Kings.
Thank you. I was actually like really burning to answer this question, so I'm glad you called me before I like train of thought.
Okay.
First of all, I mean, let's acknowledge something that like the elephant in the room. which is that so many gaming leads use the gamers pun. And quite frankly, most of us, actually all of us pretty much, represent a larger LGBTQIA community. And that can be very tricky sometimes with messaging for people who, let's be honest, I mean, gaming as a whole is a male dominated space, and particularly a cis male dominated space. And so creating the expectations around representing the larger queer community while still using the pun, I think is one of those things you always have to put forth in all of your messaging. Always use the phrase LGBTQIA or queer or whatever it is that you're using as your term to make sure more people feel welcome and part of the community and represented. In my org, particularly, we actually don't have a single cis white gay person in our 7-person leadership. And it's funny because everyone thinks that we do.
I thought you did. That was me. I thought you did.
No, it's okay. Literally everybody does. And, so it's one of those things that I think as leaders, we have to be really responsible about, is always making sure that people see us the way we want to be seen and putting that in our messaging all the time. Now, to your point, Gordon, you were talking about basically how anchoring yourself, we kind of had it easy in the sense that Seattle Gamers never sought to be a gaming group. We sought to be a social hub. And our idea is that we create a space that's safe, we create the consistency around it, and then you find your people and you break off and do your own thing. So we do have like board game related events, we do have like movie related events, we have like, just plain socials, we have our, actual video game nights, and they're all different. So you can find your people and break off, do your own thing. I mean, we're sitting at like 1,700 members, and like everyone has their own little friend groups. And it's less about it being like a clique and more about connecting with people. If today you are a Civ queer, then you can play Civ all you want with these 24 people you've met. If tomorrow you decide you're gonna go a Pokemon Go raid with someone, you can do that. And quite frankly, when I joined Seattle Gamers, I had not owned a video game console in 18 years. And so one of the biggest frustrations to me was that I was a board gamer. And everyone would always ask me, oh, what kind of games do you play? And I'd start listing off these board games, and people would be like, oh, so you're not a real gamer. And it was really disheartening. So basically, to the short version being, find your anchor. In our case, it was a social hub. It's going to be different for everyone. And as long as you stay true to your messaging, if you build it, they will come. Honestly, that's me.
And it's so funny because I've had the pleasure of being at events with not with you, JC, not in real life, but everyone else. I've actually been to your events, so I've had a chance to experience the flavor. That's why it's such a rich question. So I'm going to go right to Rafi because I've been to New York. And I'm just. You are muted.
Oh, hello,
There you are.
moments.
Okay.
See, I switched from coffee to Pepsi, so So, our motto at NYC Gamers is #YouBelong. The Y in gamers for us means you belong, right? And that's our way of echoing what Kin said. It's our way of reminding ourselves that even though we have strong ties to the gamer pun, right? We're still inclusive and we're intentional about that and what we bring with us. So, Gordon, it's hard for me to think about like times where I've had to pick and choose what am I bringing with me, because I believe that me being my authentic self uninterrupted every step of the way is giving folks, or I want to believe that it's giving our community the inspiration to do the same thing, to live authentically, to live and thrive uninterrupted. And then when they bring that to gaming communities, when they bring that to NYC Gamers, when they bring that to other gaming spaces that we're connected with, we're able to look at other leaders or aspiring leaders. And instead of us being the ones saying, look at these amazing things we're doing, we can say, look at the amazing things that our community is doing. And it is our mission to uplift them, to amplify their voices. The brighter I shine, the brighter my community shines with me. Call me a gaming socialist or whatever you want to do, but like, I'm constantly going back and forth with my board because I'm like, no, yeah, we could totally do that event, right? Also, let's see what they're doing in this other place because I heard they're also doing an event like that. So let's partner with them or let's uplift what they're doing. Let's get more people to see what they're, like, because at the end of the day, I don't see the point in having 1,700 different Pokemon leagues across the US, but then there's like one Black trans person at like 7 out of 800 of them, and they don't even know each other. That to me is what makes my ass itch. And that's where I'm like, and then when it's time for us to work with mainstream game developers and sponsorships, they don't know where to find us. And I'm like, but we're here. It's just that, we're operating under these constructs that keep segregating us and keep separating us, even if unintentionally. And that's why it's our responsibility as the ones who are carrying the torch, as the ones who are helming the ships, to say, no, they're here. And we're going to find them if they don't find us first. And we're going to keep bringing them along with us. And we're going to push them ahead of us. And we're going to uplift them because if one of us get left behind, we're all falling back.
Right on. Wow. On that note, Rick.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough because I really relate with Kint's with what what you were saying earlier about the representation and really the branding, quote unquote, of the pun, right, of this SF Gamers thing. We've had this conversation, I cannot tell you how many times within our group, trying to figure out what we want to do. In fact, this year we were, well, before all of this stuff with the pandemic happened, we were in heavy conversation about when, right? Because we wanted to change the name from just SF Gamers to SF Queer Gamers, right? Or should it be SF LGBTQ plus gamers, right? Like there's so many different ways to pull this in. For me, part of the reason that I like queer and the reason I like gay is because if you really think about the connections that we have as queer people to one another, it is through our trauma. It is through our discrimination. Because if you are 30,000 feet above and you're looking at the situation, what does a gay man have to do with a lesbian, right? Their interests, right? If you have gaming as an interest, that's an intersection, but like romantically, like we're talking about same-sex love or whatever you want to call that, but like a gay man does not have the same interests as a lesbian woman, right? Like they're in many ways complete opposites. And so what connects us is the discrimination that we experience because of being lumped into this group. LGBTQI plus has become a thing because we know all of those have experienced a very similar vein of discrimination based off of gender and sexual expectation, right? And so that gay, right, as we know, has been something that has been used as a slur for all of us. It doesn't matter if you're lesbian, it doesn't matter if you're trans, it doesn't matter if you are gender expansive and straight, right? Like all of us have experienced having somebody call us super gay, or you're gay, or that's gay, right? And so that trauma is the thing that binds us, which is unfortunate, right? Because there's so many other things that can bind us, right? That experience of how we celebrate and see love, that experience of how we celebrate and see community, all of those things should be the center of it. But the truth of it is that we are essentially forced communities. We wouldn't exist if we weren't discriminated against, right? We would just be, right? And so that conversation comes up a lot. And what we try to focus on in SF Gamers is to really, as Kins was talking about earlier, provide that space so that you can bring your passion, you can bring your love into this. Whether it is board games, whether it's card games, whether it is video games, all of those things I do, by the way. I'm like that gamer. You should see the board game collection on top of the video game collection. Like we are over 3,000 games in my apartment alone, mostly due to my roommate because he likes games more than I do. But but it is a matter of saying, hey, we see where you have not been accepted in this space. Now we are going to create a space where we can be generative and share our hobbies, and our passions together without having to worry about all that BS that comes with what people think about who we are, right? So yeah, that's our philosophy. I mean, our very first motto was everybody games, and that's true. And it doesn't matter if you're somebody who plays games on a phone, somebody who plays patty cakes and tiddlywinks with your 4-year-old, somebody who does, everybody games. Ain't no way about it. So
that's interesting. So that move from identity to values, right? And being who does belong is, or people who share your values versus who shares your identity, which are two different things, right? A shared experience is not necessarily a shared set of values, right? Like going forward, what you sort of do with that experience is actually sort of up to you. I mean, all of you have chosen to lead groups, for example, right? Like you take your perspective experiences, and you're like, I'm going to lead a group, right? I'm going to put the chairs out. I'm going to plug the machines in. I'm going to make this happen. But that's actually a very unique, expression, right, of identity, and definitely not a universal one. But enough about me. Back to you, JC. Same question.
All right. So we talk about queerness.
Yeah.
There are people in my group who come from so many different walks, and I get so many different messages about things that I can and can't say. I am now starting to get straight men that are trans trafficked coming in my group. And they are starting to look for those with trans experience in our group, trans female gamers, trans male gamers who are, streaming, looking for their outlets. It's really shocking. I have everything from, people who are DL to people who are, just a part of maybe straight centered communities. And they have never, and this has happened in my chapter locally in Virginia, where I had some guys come and they've been around predominantly straight spaces. And they said, oh, well, I need some gay friends. And it's been just a wild type of experience to meet so many different walks of life. So I think when we say what people that are queer are looking for, it really does bring the topic of gaming around safety, comfort. And then I think we branch out from there, because then it's just like, oh, I can be myself. So am I looking for a date? Or, you know what I'm saying? And then it kind of, because you're kind of just like, oh, don't feel weird. So then we, when you talk about games queerness, then we kind of move forward to typically, you see guys in a group or in a military group or something, and they're talking about, oh, well, we're playing Call of Duty later, da 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 da. Okay, you're in the military, you get it. In my group, I can tell you, I cannot stop seeing that Niecy Nash meme where she's looking back and it says, you can't fight crime if you ain't looking cute. That's kind of what the queerness is in our group. There is a severe competition of fashion, especially amongst supporter types in Final Fantasy, whether it's skin costumes in Overwatch, whether it's custom designs in Soul Calibur 6 or Tekken. Like it's queerness really comes to the forefront with us when it comes to stuff like that. And it's on a masculine and a feminine it covers the whole entire spectrum. You see all different types of just creative ideals that just come with the freedom of what it is to be us. The way we keep our compass on that is actually by topic tagging in the group. So this is something that I'm on my admins about all the time, and they think I'm such a, stickler for, doing this stuff. And I'm just like, hey, y'all topic tag? Are y'all topic tagging? This is important. This is how we get our voice out. This is how we show the metrics. This. I go to a meeting and then I can say, oh, well, I got 2,000 people. I'm making 1,000 posts a month. I got 20,000 comments, and a good 20% of that is tagged under Pokemon topic. You know what I'm saying? So then they can have that conversation about, if we are coming from a culture perspective, what is the culture perspective? So topic tagging really lets us, and along with keeping up with current events, because sometimes we have to make new tags. We did that with Nintendo, and then Animal Crossing hit. Animal Crossing was dominating the group. So we had to start making a tag for the group, and making a tag for the group, subgroups started to pop out. Same thing with Genshin Impact. Genshin Impact hit, and I felt like that just started to change the narrative of what an RPG was on a console anyway. And a lot of people who had never played gacha games before started to get involved. We had to bring a topic tag out for that. I went live a couple of times trying to explain, hey, don't break your wallet. I play gacha games. You don't want to get wrapped up into this. You will go broke real quick for your rent, And then, lastly, that's kind of how we keep with that. But what is true versus what is true for us in the community? I think what's typically true of gamers is that gamers will congregate with one another around something that they're interested in or used to. Like, you go to a basketball tournament for like N1 or something, and after the game it's just like, oh, well, you play 2K, and then you got a 2K league that you can go and join or something like that. For us, it's things like and I want to give a shout out to Princess Slim and the FGC, because when he was winning sets and putting on lip gloss in between sets and popping his lips at his opponents, that was us. We needed that moment. We saw it. We was going crazy. We was retweeting it. We was reposting it. It was like, come on, Miss Mama, you better do that. You know, and like it was that was us in queerness and what's true for us. And I think typically when you see the groups that come together, that it's great to see that, because then gamers, but then it's gamers, you know, and then all those that encompass within that bubble. And it's so great to see people like Slim making those moments. Or when I go on Twitch and I see Rose Evergreen always streaming. She's a person of color that's a drag queen streamer, and she's done in and out of drag. I've donated to her tournaments, you know, excellent to see, just to be able to see that and be like, oh, I'm out here, you know, because it happens to us too. When we get in our spaces, it's like, oh, this is nice. We can, you know, kind of feel ourselves out here. So I think that's kind of like what it brings the queerness to, how we keep the comforts of it, and what we try to really show people that's really true for us.
Elaine, don't feel left out. Same question.
So much good stuff has been said already.
Yeah.
But what I would say in our group, after pursuing that nonprofit status, everything changed, because now it's like, now you have to be professional. Now you have a front to put up. You have a board that you need to adhere to. Everything becomes, so I wouldn't say boxed in, but there's structure that we didn't previously have. So when we could bring in the queerness to whenever we wanted, or we could bring in the whimsical or whatever it was that we wanted to bring to the table, now we have like people who we need to talk to first, and set our compass in a much different way. Like, I cannot just say I'm going to make this event with such and such people, and everything would be like, wait, hold on, what did we discuss this together? So now more than anything, what we ended up doing, we sat with each other, because we're a group of 6 co-founders, and one of the things that really has changed the course of our trajectory for organization is making decisions together. And that unity is really what brings our community together, because we value each other's opinions, and we value each other's interests, and whatever our passions are, enough to bring it to each other so that we can do something about it. And one of these things for our compass was collaborating with organizations where we are not experts in, right? So if we want and have an interest and a passion for celebrating the Black community, for oh my god, I'm escaping the word, for Black History Month, let's talk to the people who have organized things. Let's talk to the people who have been working in this space for a long time. Let's not try to steal the limelight from people who have been doing the work. And Rafi was on our spotlights for this month, for our Afro Latinx celebration spotlight.
Wait.
And
Ah,
yeah.
ah. Okay.
And that was the whole idea, where we recognize when we need to partner with folks, and when we need to hear from the community as to what do they want to celebrate, what do they want to bring to the table, what kind of events do they want, what do they need. And those things have really stirred our compass, because we are listening constantly to what our community wants from us, because we only exist for our community. If it were for us, we would just do our own thing, right? Because it's a lot of work to bring people together. So thanks to the community, they're the ones who allow us to make decisions when it comes to what are the types of workshops and seminars that you guys need? What are the types of financial resources that you need, or legal resources? So, who needs to talk about visas and potentially immigrating from their country to the United States for work? Those type of conversations are difficult to have, and it's not easy to have access to like a lawyer, or somebody who knows law, or somebody who can help you with recruiting, or talking to HR. So really have dependence on our community and their needs, and everything that we can do for them. That's exactly what we do. And together with our NGO status, when we were trying to figure out what we wanted from Latinx and gaming, we sat down and we're like, what is our purpose? Sure, we're a community, but we want to be much more than that. What can we do to really solidify our purpose and our intent inside the game space? And in drafting all that paperwork and BS that comes with IRS and like all that stuff, in drafting that nonprofit status, was 3 pillars that we really decided were core to us. It was building community, so all of our things fall into that. Um, cultural representation in games and in the industry. So we want to see more Latinx leaders in, in director roles, in streaming broadcasting roles. We want more leadership from our space. And the third pillar that we decided that we wanted to go for was professional development. So it was really helping everybody who already has a job or wants to get a job be able to level up. So that then they can bring other folks in as they're continuing with their career. And I think those are the things that have been anchoring us and have been steering us in the right direction. Because when we need to talk to sponsors about money for an event, what is the return of investment? Well, here are all these three pillars that we hope that one of them works for y'all, right? Because that's another thing, is always, what's the ROI? It's just like that we exist, that we have voices, and that we matter. That's your ROI right there. But unfortunately, there's financial implications to events. And even when it comes to Twitch streaming, having a production team, having a broadcaster, paying them for their time, paying for somebody to do graphics and motion graphics that are really nice, paying for venues, hopefully when the pandemic is over, getting food, all this stuff, it costs so much money that we didn't even know, like in the back end, right? Like, holy cow, you can spend $5,000 on juice and fruits at like a conference. But it's really tough, right, to be able to convince people that you matter and that your work matters, right? But allowing those three pillars to speak for themselves when we talk to these people have really allowed us to form relationships and collaborations and partnerships with folks like queer women in esports, who we will collaborate with some point soon to make something happen, or even Blacks in Gaming, to collaborate with them in whatever events that they're putting up with. Whatever we can do, like, we're all running this race together, right? Because we all want space in games, because we matter. And it's time for the other folks who have had the limelight for a long time, allow us to step up to the plate and allow us to prove ourselves, because we have a lot to say, we have a lot of creativity, and there's so much that we can offer to the industry as a whole.
Yeah, all that. Well, obviously, this is just the beginning of discussion. Next time on Queer Communities of Color, we're going to talk about the rise of the streamer, right? Because I'm sure in all your communities, right, there's been a cultural shift from people who are good at throwing a party, like I know where to put all the cups and plates, to people who can stream. I've got a feed on Twitch, right? Or I know how to run a Discord. And there's like it's been a real change in the perceived value, right, of your events in organizations that's taken place this year. But we'll talk about that next time. This has been a fantastic hour. I want to thank all our guests one more time. Put in the chats, because people are going to see this asymmetrically. They're going to be watching this on YouTube, like, and Facebook later, and be all like, how do I find you, right? So if one more time you can just put in the chat your links for folks. And I just want to thank everyone we've had today. I mean, we had Abby and Trinidad and Black in Gaming and our Indigenous game creators. And of course, all of you representing organizations that we now know are global. I didn't know, JC, I didn't know. Internet, I didn't know I had to bring my passport. Now I know, right? If I want to come to your meeting. And obviously with all of you who are regional, I hope that we can reconvene again. Because I just want to see you all and celebrate, not only in Discord, but in person. So thank you. Thank everybody for watching. Thanks again, Rob Manuel, our executive producer, making this all go. And all of you who watched and stayed, like, yeah, let's just reach out and like treat each other well. Like, just plain period. Cool. I think we're done.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Gordon, we love you. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're
Thanks,
welcome.
everyone.
Yes, thank you.
Bye. Oh, we're rating. Oh, he goes, who we're rating? Oh my God. He's like,
We're rating.
I never get it right. Oh my God. King of Pants. Oh my God. Of course, King of Pants.
You got
Of
it.
course, King of Pants. Of course, King of Pants. That was easy. All one word.
2, 1.
All right, we're rating. Oh my God, raid. That was awesome.
Yay, that was awesome.
I couldn't throw anything into the chat at all. I kept trying.
Oh no.
Oh, well, sorry. Well, that's okay. This is the
Okay.
good thing about having our own channel is this is the beginning of the discussion.